My name is Julie Wilburn Peeler, and I am here with Dr. Elaine Heath, the Professor of Evangelism at Perkins Theological. Welcome. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. She is leading us in this year's 2013 Annual Conference Bible Study, and we just had some questions for her. Over the course of this week, you have talked about a rule of life. Can you unpack what a rule of life is for a person sitting in the pews on a Sunday morning?
I think of a rule of life as being something like holy habits. When John Wesley started the Methodist Church, he established something called the general rules, and most Methodists could quote those. First, do no harm. Second, do all the good you can. And third, attend to all the ordinances of God. And so it's in our own DNA to follow a disciplined practice. That's why they were called Methodists. They were very methodical about doing what will lead to holiness of heart and life. So a rule of life is a common set of practices for how we will live. And in our Wesleyan tradition, the way to do this is to be accountable in small covenant groups. That's what the class and band meetings were in early Methodism.
Your vision for this renewal of our church in the 21st century is definitely refreshing for many of us. But I believe it's also a challenge to us, especially as we have some churches who struggle to meet the budget day in, day out. And they're listening to this vision, they're inspired by it, they want to do it, but have a difficult time taking that first step. If you were to encourage someone to take that first step at church, what would you tell them?
I would encourage the pastor or the lay leader that's interested in having this kind of ministry flow out of the church to gather together everyone who's interested and take them on a 6-week study through Longing for Spring. We wrote Longing for Spring exactly for this reason, to help the church begin to think about how can we get out of ourselves and much more engaged in the world in the deeply Wesleyan way, following a rule of life, following practices of prayer, hospitality, and missional engagement. Going through that study, then they could begin to discern, are there people in our congregation who are feeling called to form a micro-community that would meet outside of the church, in someone's home, in a community space, in a library, or wherever the people are. And there is an unlimited number of possibilities here. And then take them through a process of discernment. I'm working on a book right now that will be out next year, working on it with Larry Duggins. It's called Missional Monastic Mainline, and it's a field guide for starting these kinds of communities.
Great.
It's a sequel to Longing for Spring. It has instructions, and we use that in our academy.
Very good, very good. One of the questions that has come up, Twitter blew up when you said this on Friday during the Bible study. Jesus doesn't seem to understand about risk management. Somebody needs to tell him that we're in a new era. You want to unpack that?
Sure. I think the biggest obstacle to churches getting outside of ourselves and actually engaging our neighborhoods is fear of lawsuits, fear of taking risks. We are extremely risk averse. And it's part of our larger culture. This is why we've given our children too many antibiotic hand wipes, and we don't let our children play on the monkey bars, and we're just so hyper about our children's safety. And we're sort of hyper about being safe all the time. So focused on being safe that we're unwilling to take any risks for God, which is absolutely contrary to the heart of the gospel. Mm-hmm. And so clearly Jesus was not so worried about risk management. He was out there breaking taboos and doing what Jesus did.
Another statement that has been risky for those of us who are clergy and very uncomfortable is this notion of bivocationality. Mm-hmm. This understanding. And for us in the United Methodist Church, that would be a radical shift in our view of the pastorate. How do you see this playing out in terms of helping the church move in more fully into the 21st century, or living out our mission and vision for this time?
The first thing I would say about that is this is going to be the future, whether we like it or not. I happen to think it's a spirit-breathed thing, as well as something that's going to evolve out of economic necessity. But we have to remember fundamentally that pastor is a spiritual gift mix. It's not a job with a paycheck in the Bible. It's certainly not a job with a paycheck in the early church. And if we can get that part right in our theology, then the idea of a bivocational pastor will make all sorts of sense. If you have someone who's a bivocational pastor, then the best case scenario, this person earns a living at some other job that they enjoy, hopefully, and have skills for. It's ideal if it's a job that can't be outsourced somewhere so that you can always get a job, right? Mm-hmm. And then the person would work with a leadership team of several lay people who work as equals with them. And the pastor who has the theological training trains that lead team. They share all of the work of being the church leadership in a small community where you have, 15 to 50 people, let's say, or 15 to 40. 50 is kind of large for a missional community. 30 is an ideal size. If you have a pastor who has theological training, and you have 5 to 7 lay people who are on the lead team with that pastor, and they're taking care of 30 people. This is not a full-time job. Mm-hmm. But what happens, this is a structure we've developed with New Day, the lay people become very, very capable in doing all the work that we think of as the pastor's domain, including hospital visits, spiritual direction with people, all of it, planning and leading worship, all those kinds of things. So what is the role of the ordained person in this new world? Sometimes I'm asked, well, if lay people can do all this ministry, then we won't count anymore. And I've even had conversations with folks about, wait a minute, you're probably going to start arguing that lay people should serve the sacraments too. To which I've responded, Jesus wasn't ordained. Jesus couldn't serve the sacraments at his own table in the Methodist Church. So I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but actually, what if we understood the pastor who's ordained, his or her role around the sacraments is to train this lay team with a deep, profound theology of the sacraments. And then everybody who's a lay person who's been trained in the sacramental theology help to disseminate that theology into how we live in the congregation. So in other words, instead of it just being the pastor who has that special ability and they're the only ones who can say the blessing and break the bread, what if the pastor becomes the theologian, the chief theologian, and the chief spiritual director and equipper of the saints? Sounds like the New Testament to me.
Thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate your powerful witness and the words that you shared with us over our annual conference. How can we find out more information about what you're doing?
It's been my pleasure to be here, truly. You can go to our website, www.missionalwisdom.com, and you can find more information on our new monastic communities, our micro-churches, New Day, and on our Academy for Missional Wisdom. We have a cohort going right now from Western North Carolina, going through the Academy, being trained to start missional micro-communities. And we're starting another cohort in the fall. So if you're interested, you can email us. The email addresses are found on our website. Thank you.